Going to see a professional dance company show like Bruce Wood Dance is such a treat. It's part visual arts, part moving picture. It's also like a short story. About the time you figure out what the story is, it's over. And then there's the music. So I'm a huge fan of Bruce Wood Dance. I had so many questions, I didn't even get time to ask them. So here it is. Drop us a line at giveagencydallas.com. Tell us what you thought. On the podcast today, on the show, I have Joy Bollinger, who is the artistic director of the amazing Bruce Wood Dance Company, who has, it's an amazing company. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. And you guys have been around for how many years now?
Bruce Wood Dance, as it's known here in Dallas, is been around since 2010.
2010. Mm-hmm. Now, why was you just said as it's known here in Dallas? What does that mean?
Well, Bruce started a company in Fort Worth when he first came back to Texas and began his choreographic career. And so that company existed from the late 1990s to 2007. And that was Bruce Wood Dance Company. And then that officially closed in 2007. And Bruce kind of went under the radar for a while. And then in 2010, it's our 13-year anniversary, he was asked to create a couple new works for a Lifetime Achievement Award. And he did that. He did a piece on Booker T, and everybody started talking about wanting to see his stuff again. And so that moment was the spark that got Dallas excited about having Bruce Wood come to Dallas. And that was the start of Bruce Wood Dance in Dallas, as the company is now.
Wow.
Yeah.
One quick thing before we keep going. It sounds like your microphone is rubbing when you move.
Yeah, it's tucked too far back from me. Let's see. How is that?
Oh, yeah, that's better.
Okay, it's in my hair.
This hair
brought to you by Hidden Microphone.
So when were you in Bruce Wood Dance?
So I had the privilege of joining the Fort Worth company when I graduated from TCU in 2002. I started the fall of that year, and I danced for him in that company until it folded in 2007. And so I'd had this kind of amazing introduction into the dance world. Yes, it was hard. Yes, he was not always kind, but I fell in love with his work then. And once I had that experience, it was really hard to be pulled towards anything else. So I began dancing for him. I mean, that's over 20 years ago now. When I first started working with him. And then that performance in 2010 for that Lifetime Achievement Award, I got to participate in that. I performed a duet with Jonathan Campbell. And so I knew that there was murmurs and talk. And Gail Halprin, the first time I met her was at that event. And she came up to me and she said, "Everyone is so excited to see Bruce's work again. We're going to have a show." And that was it. That was the moment that the company took off in Dallas, and it started as a project. Bruce, of course, was reluctant and hesitant. And Gail said, "Okay, we'll just one show. I'll do one show, and it'll be a pickup project. We'll just pick up dancers from here and there, and we'll just see." And so it began to have one summer a performance. It would have students from Booker T, students from SMU. Anybody else who was willing and able and could make the hours work. And then it had Kimmy Nikaido and myself were veteran dancers from the Fort Worth company that were still able to dance and around and available. So we got to kind of come on as the mentors of that project and still dance for him again, but help develop a little bit of an energy and a feel for what he liked in his choreography, and helped craft that on this new generation at that time.
So when did you stop dancing with Bruce Wood, and what'd you go do?
Oh, mercy. Well, in 2014, I became pregnant with my first child, my son. And so I had moved to California, but was coming back to Texas when Bruce had a show, and if I could make it. And so he had a show coming up in that at the end of, I guess that was June that year, 2014. And I told him, I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm pregnant, and I'm going to be huge in June," because my son was due in August, ended up coming in July. And he said, "You know what? You just take your time when you're ready to come back," because I've been dancing for him every year up to that point. And so that was the year he passed away. And he had asked me to come just watch rehearsal and give input. And I flew to Texas and was in Houston. And that's when I got the phone call that he had passed away. So I came up to Dallas and was scheduled to come watch rehearsal. And that was a really a pivotal moment for the company and everybody's decisions at that point. And I kind of stepped into the role a little bit at that moment of a rehearsal assistant, helper in any way, because everybody was just trying to do what they could to support that. Kimi Nikaido was there, Nicole Ray was there helping, Gail was there, and the dancers were invested and they wanted to still perform. So I did perform more after my first child and danced for the company, even in the absence of Bruce under Kimi Nikaido's leadership, until I had my second child at age 39. So I think my last performance, I was 38 years old, and it was a thrill and a joy to dance at that age, and feel like, wow, what a beautiful career and amount of time enjoying the stage, and now I get to enjoy it from the other side. And so 38 years old was my last big hurrah.
That's a long time, isn't it? The average, I meant to look this up before we got on, but of course, I had the idea in the middle of the night, and you're like, I'll remember this in the
Yeah.
morning. What is the average career for a dancer in years? I have to think it's less than 10, 2,
yeah,
5.
I think it depends perhaps on what exact style. Ballet dancers do move into their 30s with lots of physical therapy and upkeep, and like doing the work outside of the studio to keep their body running at that level. Bruce loved older dancers. He said many times, "I love working with older dancers," and that just means in your 30s, not old in any other standard, but that standard. He said they dance smarter. They make better decisions on stage. Their presence, everything has arrived to this really beautiful place where they're not so driven by the technical aspects, but the artistry and the real relationship with self, and arriving to their identity arrives them to be super vulnerable and real on stage. And so I held on to that in my later years, knowing that he valued that, and he valued that over the tricks and the physical feats. I love our dancers in our company now. We have a group of them that have had careers before this one in dance and have moved into this company, and they're approaching their 30s or in their 30s, and they are the most intelligent, thoughtful, artistically gifted group because they've seasoned in such a beautiful way. And so, yeah, 38 is probably pushing it. I know people who've danced way past that. Our rehearsal director, Matt Rivera, danced till I believe 45. So it is possible. You can do it, but it is extraordinary. And it does take a certain eye and a certain hope for the director to see something else on stage rather than just only technical aspects, even though we crave those too, and those are vital and important.
Did you think for a second about coming back after your second
Oh,
kid?
mercy. I think my body told me, you better not.
You're done.
My body was just done. And I I like to believe I still dance, but it's a different audience. I'm dancing around my house with my kids. I'm dancing in the studio when I'm choreographing on the dancers, and it's just your body doesn't recover as fast when you're older. And so maybe you can do some of the things you used to do, but the amount of upkeep and time that would take to be at the level that you would want to be at, I think that's probably the hardest part of that decision making there when you're finishing out that part of your career.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned something a minute ago, and this was actually not on my list of questions, but what was, and you might, if you'll adjust your microphone one more time, it's starting to, there you go. It was just starting to push again. What was Bruce like?
Bruce?
Is he kind of like this mad genius? It seems like if somebody's got that mad genius push, everybody loves them despite their, I'm trying to look for a nice word for it. And maybe it's because there's not really a nice word for it. They're not always nice, like what you said.
When I first began working for him, he was extremely demanding. I think that he wanted the dancers to join together as one in the space. And so when new members joined the company, he would create this intensity and need for incredible focus in the room. And I think he was incredibly emotionally intelligent. I think he knew what he was doing. He was creating this need for each other, because if the person at the front of the room is on this tipping point where they need everybody, and they could be angry, they could get mad, they just say forget it and walk out, but they need this amount of intense focus and attention on the work and attention on him. He didn't say much. He didn't say much when he was creating. He would just do, and then he might say, no, not like that. But instead of describing it verbally, he might just come take your hand and put it on somebody a different way. And he said, more like this. And very subtle, very nuanced. You had to really take everything in so carefully, because you had to quickly understand what he meant without him necessarily explaining it in detail. If he wasn't...
Doesn't sound like he was maybe a great communicator with words.
Right. Not at all.
Yeah.
It was about feelings. And I think if he wasn't happy with what we produced, it didn't matter if somebody was in pain, if we were pouring with sweat, he would just say, again, and you might have to run in a 20-minute work from the start all over again. And so it was extremely demanding, physically, mentally, emotionally. And he could be, he could use his words when he wanted, in a very fierce way. And I think at the time, he maybe didn't know how much this group of people loved him. So he really made sure that he injected a little bit of fear in there as a motivator, instead of relying on the love of him and the art form. When he started the second company in Dallas, I saw a shift in him, and I felt that he approached it a little bit differently the second time around, where, yes, he could still be demanding. He could still, show extreme dislike at times if you weren't producing at the level you needed to be. However, he had a little bit more understanding and a little bit more just joy in the process. I think having lost the first company and that part of his life closing, I think that second chance, he gave himself a little bit of grace there. with what he was requiring and the output. And I get it now that I'm on the choreographer side of it. It is hard to walk in every day, create on demand, and don't just create anything, create greatness on demand.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it at a level and a speed. In the Fort Worth company, he would have a new work in every show, and that was 4 times a year. And then we'd be revisiting other works of his. So he was just having to pour out of himself constantly. And that's hard. And it's hard to do that. And then the other aspects of the job, which, can be time consuming and stressful in a myriad of other ways. So it's like he needed the dancers to be the most stable and common denominator of all the things. He needed that to be just, home, the safe bet.
So when you became the artistic director, that was 2019,
yeah, it was
is that right?
The fall of 2018.
Okay. So you got a full year before COVID. No, you got 2 years before COVID was like, haha.
Yeah. Yeah. Little did we know.
So, did you, because the 3 shows I've seen so far, you had a work in every show. Are you following in the footsteps of doing a work for every show? Or are you pulling from things that you've already choreographed?
Both. I'm pulling from things that I've choreographed on the company and creating new works. Right now, as artistic director, I am also resident choreographer for the company when we want an in-house work created, and I'm the repetiteur restaging Bruce's works. So it's a pretty layered job in that way. The goal is for there to be at least one opportunity each season for me to create a new work. It's important to us because we're still Bruce Wood Dance. This company has the foundations of his work, but we also search for new works that can be created on the dancers that not only align with Bruce's aesthetic, but create that sense of we are forming something from us and putting that out in the world. And he was really invested in the choreographic process, and he really pushed himself as choreographer to do things that were different and not always do the same work. So I would like to believe that I am working towards that, and choreographing is my most favorite part of my job. I delight in it. Yes, it can be a stress and a huge undertaking, but I feel that when I'm working on that, it's one of those things where you present something and you realize that might just be the most true form of expressing myself that I have.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come back to the creative things because I'm very curious about so when you create a piece, is that your piece or does Bruce Wood Dance own that piece because you're employed there? How does that work?
It is tricky. When we bring in a person, we do a contract with them where we usually have rights to perform the piece for 3 years. The choreography is always the intellectual property of the choreographer. So even with my work, it's my intellectual property. I have permission to use it and share it and do what I please. If I had an opportunity to send it somewhere else, I could do that, restage it on somebody else. The company has permission to perform it. And yeah, it's a great thing because it's a treat for me because you're working with such high caliber, incredibly gifted dancers and you're familiar with them. So what you can dream up is quite endless because you know this group, you know their strengths, you know who can do what, and you can start to really imagine and build before you're ever in the studio with the dancers.
So, because that has to help you guys, right? You have how many works of Bruce's do you have in the library that you can pull from, because and you don't have to pay for those at all. Like
Right.
I know that you have in the first show I came to was Renew, and you had the Lar Lubavitch piece. And so I'm assuming, all right, you have costs
Mm-hmm.
for Lar to come in and create that piece. There was your piece in that particular show, which I loved as well. And then you had a Bruce piece. And so in theory, the cost for that particular show was the Lar Lubavitch,
Right.
right? But then the other
Yeah.
ones, it seems like a huge advantage for your company versus other companies is that you have this giganto library to pull
It is
from.
a massive advantage. And the thing is, our audience and people that even don't know the company yet, Bruce's the library of his work is so good, and there's so much to pull from that it's a treasure trove. You can say, oh, this guest is going to come and they're going to do something, sultry and flute. Okay, we need a pump. You have every option you need to really balance a show. And I think that's probably why the company, we have such a strong foundation, because when you bring in a guest artist, they could be inspired by anything. It's a little bit of a blind date, you know their work, you know what they've done in the past, but in terms of knowing exactly what's going to be moving them at that point in time when they're coming in to stage something on the company, it's a little bit of a gamble. And so that's what's a real advantage for us. And thank you to Bruce for creating so many amazing works and for pushing himself to different aspects of the work. He has beautifully fluid ballet works, things that use space in such a gorgeous and seamless way. And then he has works where he says, forget that. Take the shoes off. We're going to be barefoot. It's going to be tough. It's going to be thrashy and thrown and raw and visceral and ugly. And then he has works that are more intimate and he really playful, fun, jazzy, light, 70s, groovy. It's the full gamut. And so that is a huge benefit for us. And it keeps us from being a rep company where you're just always having to, financially pull in a guest for every single piece in a show. And his works are outstanding. They're outstanding. So lucky us.
Yeah. So you mentioned the different styles of dance. When you guys are looking for dancers, is there like okay, you have to have this background, this background, this background?
Yeah, it is. There is a need for a strong discipline in ballet technique. However, there is also a need for a real sense of weight and the groundedness and flow that comes with modern and contemporary work. It takes a special individual, because I feel like often, and especially what sometimes is elevated in young people in dance with these generations right now that are coming out of high school and college, is they have been taught to move in a lot of different ways, but they have mostly been trained to achieve emotional fierceness on stage. And that is powerful, and that is exciting, and that is good. But they may not have had many experiences where they need to have contact with another human being and for it to feel real and intimate, and they haven't maybe had opportunities to be just a person dancing instead of a dancer presenting. And so that is something that I feel is sometimes a challenge for the youth. I see their physical ability has incredible range. I think contemporary has come so far that most dancers who have trained in those avenues have taken on a lot and physically and had a lot of experiences. I think it comes kind of back to what we were saying about the older dancers, to being at the place where you can share different parts of yourself on stage and train in that way with other people and be able to work with others at that level.
Your dancers are amazing.
They're amazing.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I grew up in dance, and I think a lot of people dance growing up. And so if you did, I'm talking to you too. To grow up in dance and experience dance and dance recitals is absolutely nothing like going to I can only speak for your dance because it's nothing like going to a Bruce Wood dance show. We came there on a lark. Joe was like, "Hey, listen, there's a performance across the street from Booker T. We're going to be there. Do you want to go in?" And I was blown away. The and the beautiful thing about so many of these works are it reminds me of a short story about the time you figure out what the main story is. You're like, oh, and you gasp and you're like, oh, it's about this. And then it's a 10-minute work. So maybe if you're not a huge fan of the first work, it's only 10 minutes, but the second work is different and it appeals to so many people. I get chills just thinking about it because like the first one was Renew. We set up close to the stage. I could hear the dancers breathing.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you guys teach the breath or is that was just because we talk about breath all the time in theater and poetry and you guys talk about, all right, breathe here, breathe here. Really? Because it was synchronized. And I was like, it has to be.
Absolutely. That was a Bruce thing. He used it in many dances, sometimes for the rhythm. There's a work we might do next season where there's a silent section and there's no music, there's no sound, it's coordinated with breath. But even when there was music, he would use breath for the dancers to fully embody the action needed. And if you're releasing a certain type of breath or an accent, it's going to really unite the group in that feeling as a whole. And also, it's a good check for each other. You know where that person is behind you and beside you when you can't see them, but you can feel them and hear their breathing in real time with you. It unifies the group and it creates that thing. He would say the most important person on stage is not any individual in the company, it's the whole. And I think he used breath for that reason as well. And we still do.
So, okay, the first one I saw was Renew and it was at Moody. The second one was Homecoming, which was in Fort Worth. And then it was back at Moody again for Awake. And now this next one is at your space in the design district. Do you consider that your home or where do you have a home?
I would say Moody Performance Hall is our home theater. That's where we produce most of our productions, a fall and a spring show every year. And then this year, our gala event has moved to the Moody.
And when is your gala? Just so
April
when people hear
29th is
April
the 13th anniversary gala and performance. And that's going to be stellar. We can talk in depth about that too.
So is it dinner, a show?
Yes, it is cocktails, a show. And then if you'd like to stay for the gala dinner, there's a beautiful setup in the lobby. We're going to eat, we're going to dance. There's going to be live music. It's going to be gorgeous. It's an evening of all Lubavitch works, which is neat because Bruce danced for Lar. And the work that's opening the show is Concerto 622 by Lar Lubavitch. Bruce danced in that piece in the 80s. And cool. So I've seen video of it and him flying about the stage. And I can't wait to see that on our dancers. Really kind of a full circle moment for the company. And Laura's creating a new work on the company called Conversing with Brahms. It's going to be...
So Laura is still alive.
He is still alive. He is approaching 80, I believe, and he is still restaging his works and choreographing. So it's really neat because you're getting to work with this person who had an impact on the person who inspired your entire career. And you see little moments where you go, I see that through line there of where this came from and where this might have shaped Bruce a little bit. And then there's other ways that they're completely different and have taken their own artistic journeys. But it's a really speaks to the legacy and the lineage of Bruce and where he came from and also where the company is going, that we have the talent and the expertise. These beautiful dancers can do works by renowned choreographers like Lara Lubavitch, and the company deserves to have masterworks like that in the rep, so that you get the full range. You get Bruce's works that are the foundation. You get new works created on the company. And then you have these pieces brought in that are established dances that are well known and acknowledged. And the dancers are getting this taste of this greatness that's been out there. And it's exciting. It's a big deal.
I feel like your company would hold up against any other company in any other city. The talent level is so high. Do you have other cities that you feel like you compete with? Do you collaborate with? Is that even on? I don't know if you guys tour or.
When you brought it up earlier, I came on as artistic director in fall of 2018, and we had this sweet little period of creating and expanding before the pandemic. In January of 2020, we had been invited to perform in New York at the Joyce Theater as part of American Dance Platform. And that was this, this rise. Here we were climbing, we were getting more opportunities to perform outside of our Texas circle. And then boom, shut down, pause button. And it really, it was a little bit of a kick in the gut in terms of that momentum that we'd built, and having people in New York say, "Oh, that's right. I've heard of Brucewood. I've seen them." The company had been at Jacob's Pillow in 2017, and so it was exciting. We were getting more opportunities to really expand our reach and our name nationally. Those opportunities are coming back, and as people are getting back into the theater and to see live performance and the name of the company, people are looking around saying, okay, which companies not only made it through the pandemic, but are up and ready to go? We're one of those. We're up and ready to go. We have great rep right now. We have great dancers right now. We did not lay off our dancers during the pandemic. We kept them.
Are they fully paid?
They were paid.
Do they have to have other jobs?
They do have to have other jobs because we don't rehearse a 40-hour work week. It's a smaller work week. The amount of hours they work depends on if it's a performance or non-performance week, but it's not a full salary in terms of, I think, what I imagine would be what it takes to survive in Dallas. But a lot of them teach in the evenings and work at studios and choreograph. And so they're fully invested in dance. We've tried to find more opportunities for them to teach for us through our outreach programs. So the more we can provide an income for them from the company is important. We want them to stick around. We want them to stay and grow with us. So we work towards a more consistent, wages and pay rates and things that can really create that return on investment when you work with a dancer so long and you want to hold on to that gift and that crafting there. So constantly working on ways to improve that and to give them more of a salary from the company.
Because Dallas, I think, has made a bigger commitment in supporting the arts. Do you see the difference from when you first started to now as far as the participation of Dallas in a dance company? Or do you think it's hard? Do you think it's
tricky to see. We have been very grateful. I feel like, especially during the pandemic and as it was finishing, a lot of grant opportunities opened up. The city of Dallas really worked to support organizations like us who lost our ability to do what we do and produce and to meet in a room and to dance together. I think now what we crave is the audiences coming back to theaters and filling up the entire place like they used to. And I think that's just a habit that was lost, during that time. Yeah. And so,
how much of your budget is made up from ticket sales?
Not a large portion, but what usually happens with a production is the cost of the production. You want just the production cost itself to at least be covered in ticket sales. Of course, the artistic cost in the weeks leading up to that, usually that funding needs to come from elsewhere. So as ticket sales, were diminished, coming out of the pandemic period, it was a struggle, because you're looking at what it takes to get a great show up in a theater and how much that cost. And we pride ourselves on artistic excellence. We don't want to cut corners. We want to have outstanding lighting, outstanding sound, outstanding dancing, outstanding rep. We want the work to be always top notch. So how do you do that, without packing the house? And it's getting there, and it's growing, and it's coming back. But yeah, go see shows.
Go see shows. Absolutely. Do you feel like, who's your competition in town? Dallas Black, I would assume, for Bodies and Chairs, LA Folklorico, because Ballet Dallas folded. Are you just competing against? It's interesting because on the next podcast, I'm having the guy from the Mesquite Rodeo, and he was like, yeah, we're competing with the Cowboys, the basketball, the theater, the everybody, but it's finding bodies.
Yeah, I think Dallas Black, they perform at the Wiley. They kind of have their own aesthetic. There are times where we join with them. We have worked closely with them. That's a company I've choreographed on, actually. Oh, cool. And we love them so much. I don't often feel that we're competing with them, because our offerings seem different in a variety of ways. What does sometimes knock us out is Titus brings in outstanding companies throughout the year to the WinSpear. And every once in a while, one of those performances might fall on our show dates. And that can sometimes be one of those moments where, we need to reevaluate, how can we do this, and how much dance, can people see weekend after weekend, and they're bringing in top-notch groups. So yes, go see those shows, but yes, come see our shows, because we're your hometown top-notch group.
Oh, you guys are amazing. I think everybody should go and see you guys. I have so many questions that I'm just not going to get to, because I want to make sure that we can talk about some of the upcoming things. But every show that I've ever seen, I have loved. And so when your stuff comes in again and Joe says, hey, do you want to go see this? I'm like, yes. I don't even ask when. I'm like, just yes.
Yay.
We'll just go.
That's what I love to hear.
So it's very exciting. One of his questions, which I thought was really interesting. Do you feel like, there's so much coming out of Me Too, women empowerment. Like, I have a director friend in the acting community who said once, well, they have to have women directors now. And he said it with this tone. It made me so sad, because I want to promote women, and we are in an age of promoting women. But his question was, is dance, of the artistic options, one of the more equitable places because there's so many women involved? Or do you feel like there's still room for women to be the executive directors, the artistic directors?
I think that has changed so much, probably just in the last 10 years. I think when I started dancing, I would see women in the role of the school director, but not the company director, not the artistic director or the executive director. And I can't think of many females that I saw in those leadership roles as I was coming up under, the Fort Worth Ballet at the time, Fort Worth Dallas Ballet, now TBT. In that ballet world, it seemed like there was definitely male leadership most often around me, in my experience. I have to say that now this company is an entirely female-led team. The administrative staff is all female. And we think that's exceptional. And we think that's great. And I think it's exciting. I think it's an interesting thing. It's one of those things we didn't realize we were doing, but we're doing it. And we spoke with a group recently that said, y'all need to highlight that. That's an accomplishment in this field. And it hasn't always been like that. And it took that kind of moment of recognition to say, that's right, that is an accomplishment. And I am seeing that more. I see news all the time where an artistic director has been appointed to a company, and it is a female now. And I think Wendy Whalen at New York City Ballet was one of those first big ones at a major ballet company. And then, it was trickling down. It was happening in Europe, but now I see it more and more here. And I feel like that's wonderful. That's very great. And I'm grateful that that people making those decisions are going, look, you have all these people to choose from who have great leadership skills. And women are especially sensitive to some of the topics that are really important, especially in ballet companies: health, physical health, mindset. There's a really great connection because women have been on that side of it, and in terms of partnering and size and what you need to be to do the work. I think they're great leaders in that aspect because they have that understanding from experience.
What does Joy Bollinger want to do with Bruce Wood Dance? I have to think it's a balance of preserving legacy and creating your own.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I feel privileged and honored to preserve Bruce's legacy. He touched so many. We recently were speaking to some presenters across the country and places we hadn't been in years since the Fort Worth coming. Said, I remember Bruce. I remember his work. I loved that piece I saw, 20 years ago, 19 years ago. And it sticks with them. And one of his goals was to do that, for the feeling and the memory of his works to linger and last in people. So carrying that on is so exciting for me. And because of what we talked about earlier, where there is so much still to share. The audience doesn't know every work he's ever done. There's so much there. We can dig out old ones that haven't been done in years. We can bring back favorites. It's just so much to pull from. And then you pair that with new work on the company and masterworks coming in, and you really have a well-rounded offering. Like you said before, the audience comes, each piece has its own thing to say. They're very different. If you didn't fall in love with number one, then number two is going to blow your socks off. If you didn't fall in love with that, then number three is going to seal the deal. It's our goal to have his work shared, hopefully in the future on a more national level, as people see that the company has incredible names in the rep next to Bruce Wood and next to Joy Bollinger. So it's an exciting time. The work is great. The dancers are great. There's nothing better I could do with my time as artistic director than watch great dance being created and put on stage by this company.
I cannot wait to see what's coming next in Woodshop, which is March 9th?
3rd and 4th. And
I don't know that if I can get this cranked out before then, but I would love to. I will definitely get it cranked out before the gala. So I've been hesitant in revisiting some of the things that I really loved in all these shows, because I was like, well, people aren't going to be able to see it. And so just talking about it, they're going to be like, well, I can see it. So do you want to talk about some of the things that maybe would show up in the gala?
So the gala is the 13th anniversary performance and gala dinner. It's the All Lubavitch program. We spoke a little bit about that before, which is really exciting because Concerto 622, Bruce danced in, a new work by Lars Lubavitch to live piano on stage conversing with Brahms. And then we end it with Elemental Brubeck, which is his fun, jazzy, entertaining work to the music of jazz composer David Brubeck. And so,
was that in the news?
That's So you've seen that one, and that's an amazing closer, right? Just so fun. The dancers afterwards, they're like, "Yes, my legs are tired, but my cheeks hurt from smiling so hard during that work." So that show is going to be outstanding. And then we have our June show. And then we're back at Moody in June to close out our season. Our
What's your
June
June show?
show is titled Grace, and I'm creating a new work for this show. It's
Okay.
titled And Heaven and Nature. And it's a look at all these patterns, fractals, tessellations, recursions, all these things you see in nature where there's a design. And you study these things. And have you ever read about that? There's all these mathematical equations that repeat in nature, and certain things that shape our world. And there's a reason why, we see clouds in that little wave pattern, and then we look and we see sand dunes in the same wave pattern. We see water doing that on top, or the branching of a tree is identical to the branching of the veins in our lungs. And so I've been kind of studying some of this, and looking at really the architecture of the earth, and taking some inspiration from that in designing a piece that really enjoys that beauty and kind of glorifies that creation, and how we live right in the middle of all that, and it just surrounds us. And I'm excited. It's going to be a great piece. I just started working on it this week.
Do you choreograph in your sleep?
I think
Do you wake up
so.
and think,
Sometimes I problem solve. The dancers try something. I say, okay, we'll leave that. And then I wake up the next day and I think, I know what to do. I know how to fix that. I know what's going to make that better.
how when you decide, okay, I'm gonna
Yes.
choreograph today. What is that?
I
How do you do
spend
that?
a lot of time before I even start a dance creating the overall structure and arc of the work. Which piece of music introduces the work the way I want to introduce it? Where can I take that? Where do I find a more intimate and emotional place in the work? And where do I situate kind of the physical and emotional climax of the piece? So I create that structure way before there's any steps in the studio made. Oftentimes I'll have imagery in my mind where I might know the formation the dancers are in. I might know where on the stage they are and what type of movement they're doing, and what visually I want that to feel like and look like, even though I'm not actually standing doing the steps right then. So I do a lot of kind of drawing and shaping the work in my head. And then once you get to the studio, you're then in that neat place where your tool is these bodies, these living, breathing humans with feelings and hearts and emotions. And you're okay, like, how do I articulate and share with you this imagery in my mind? And a lot of times I kind of tell them, right now I visualize this, and the feeling of, have you ever watched, the other day I said, have you ever watched like a snowflake melt? And it's like, it's melting slowly, but then little things kind of like break suddenly within that shape. And we were playing with this idea of their shape kind of softly melting with these little moments of action, and they go there with me. They'll try anything, they'll try everything. And that's the best part, is when you're having those ideas come to fruition in the space in real time on bodies. And sometimes it's better than you imagined, and sometimes it's a horrible idea when you're in the space with real people. You say, okay, all right, I forgot about, gravity or things, in your mind, everything can happen. And then it gets really exciting.
That's awesome. Well, Joy, you have made a liar out of me, because I told you we'd probably be done in 30 to 45 minutes, and we're right at 55. So I'm going to respect your time, even though I would love to talk to you so much, because I'm such a fan. Is there anything else that you want to mention that maybe we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I should just say, in that June show as well, we have a new work being created on the company by guest choreographer Ben Needham Wood. He danced for Bruce with the company in 2013 on his way to California to work with SMU and ballet, and he's had an amazing career. He's going to do an outstanding new work titled Ghost, and then Bruce's Rhapsody in Blue. is coming back to the stage. It's fun, it's flirty, it's gorgeous. And that's going to be the amazing closer of our season. So check it out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you
your
for
time being
having
here.
me. It was a joy.
It was a joy with Joy. Yay.
Hey, you're still here. Thanks. Some of you have asked about some giveaways, which I like free stuff. I'll give stuff away, but I'm not quite sure what you mean. So again, drop us a line at giveagencydallas.com and tell me what you want. Thanks.